I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And keeping the palms joined. And keep the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Good to see you all here. Thank you for being here. It's funny when I look down and I hit the button for us to stream to the millions of fans out there following us. It's actually only like 12, but millions just sounds cooler, you know. There's a little thing that says you are live, but every time I look at it, my mind like plays tricks on me and it says you are alive. And so it's like this just kind of funny little reminder of like I'm alive, and I'm like, wow, okay, so from there I could do anything. And it's a really cool feeling to just know that, like, with all the madness of the world that we've faced the last 2.5 years, like, we're alive. And that's a really beautiful thing. And I think for me, it's, I said just downstairs a few moments ago that, like, you know, life pre-pandemic and everything else that's going on in our lives was hard enough already. And then you add in what we've all been dealing with the last 2.5 years, and it's incredibly difficult to get through days for a lot of people. So, not that you all have to hit like a YouTube button every day, but I think it is a good reminder to just, you know, really stop each day if you don't, and just kind of take a few moments, take a few breaths to say, like, wow, I'm alive. And just know that that in itself is a pretty great task, you know. It's not easy every day to keep ourselves alive. You know, there's a lot of things we got to eat. You know, there's a lot of things we have to do, and that can be very difficult. So give yourself some credit for just being alive, and that's a really beautiful place to start. And then from there, now that we're alive and we have the breath and we have our mind and we have our heart, we have the ability to work on taking care of them. And that's just a phenomenal practice, challenge, opportunity. It's just a really great place to be in a mindset of, I'm alive and I have an opportunity to work on myself. I have an opportunity to find a sense of peace and happiness in my life. So it's a good place to be. And you know, I think for a lot of people who often just maybe don't stop to appreciate the journey that you've been on, it's important to reflect on that a little bit and just be proud of yourself for, you know, what you've gone through to get to this point. So I'm sure many of you have had tremendous obstacles and chaos and traumas and difficulties. So, you know, be proud of yourself for being here. And to our millions of followers, welcome. Feel free to introduce yourself online there. Say hello. It's always nice to see you. And when we get to questions, feel free to chime in there as well. So we'll start with a meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away, most likely. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Am I doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. So posture, just want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often helps. Slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Same thing if you're on a bench or a chair, relaxing the shoulders. Trying to sit up straight. Hands are on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. I will guide us as we begin. And we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, you'll settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments. Just sitting. Breathing. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. Most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's not from anything I said. It's It's not from how we sit, hold the hands, or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us, or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why we suffer, why we get angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way we responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how we respond to everything else that's happening throughout our day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap where the way we feel now is closer to how we feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not necessarily easy. This practice is not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often we think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. And very often that present moment is incredibly challenging and difficult and painful. And so this practice is learning to be with that present moment as it arises. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice free. Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody you encounter every moment of your life. And that's why it's such a fun, easy practice, because you just have to go out there and be nice to everybody, which I know is so simple for everyone in this room. That's why we're here, because we're already nice to everybody. This is difficult. So much conflict and difficulty can arise throughout our entire day. And this practice is being able to see that very clearly and watching the nature of the mind and what it does as these conflicts and challenges arise. And very often we spend a lot of time trying to fix and control, manipulate things that are completely out of our control. So much time trying to control what others think or say or do. We have a hard enough time controlling what we think and say and do. Yet for some reason, we get this crazy idea that we're going to be able to get the rest of the world to think and say and do what we want. That's hard. And once we stop trying to change, fix, control everything outside of us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to what arises, life gets simpler. And that doesn't always mean that life becomes easy or simple or perfect. In fact, the teaching is to recognize that life is perfect as it is. The confusion there is we have this, as with all words, in every language, we have this attachment to an idea of what we think a word means. So if I say life is perfect or life is beautiful exactly as it is, then we potentially start to get into our definition of what perfect is, or our definition of what beautiful is. And the immediate response could be, well, look at what's going on in the world right now, in this country right now. how can we say this is perfect? How can we say this is beautiful? So if we begin to break down the meaning of those words and how we associate with the meaning of those words, then one could very easily say, well, no, it's not perfect and it's not beautiful. It's an absolute, hectic, chaotic, disgusting mess. But if I wake up every day and all I focus on is how everything in this country is a disgusting mess, what kind of mood do you think that's going to put me in? Happy mood. Yeah, well, I guess if that works for you, you know. I mean, you know, there is the idea and very genuine truth to the fact that when we see things potentially as that, that's a motivator. So, you know, we're all motivated different ways. But I think the heart really of, for me at least, expressing things and what I've learned from, I consider great teachers and masters along the way, that to see life beautiful as it is, to see life perfect as it is, what that means to me is that you're removing any description whatsoever of what life is. That you're just seeing it for exactly how it is. And very specifically in the Zen practice, the teaching is that as soon as we start to describe any experience, it is no longer the actual experience. It is only our interpretation. And the longer we go trying to describe an experience, interpret an experience, express an experience, the further we actually get from the truth of what that experience was. There's another name for the Buddha. Tathagata means suchness, things as they are. And that's what life is, things as they are. I choose to see them as perfect and beautiful and see the disgusting things that occur. Because yes, I am one that is motivated by those things. You know, you look at the horrific acts that are occurring in our society today, and that really can motivate you to try to create change. And, you know, as the Buddha taught, craving and desire is the root cause of our suffering. But he also said that there's healthy cravings and healthy desires. And if none of us had a craving or desire to suffer less, if none of us had a craving or desire to be happier and more peaceful, none of us would be here on this spiritual journey. So we begin to differentiate, ideally based on our intention, of healthy cravings and desires, unhealthy cravings and desires. So with that, I'll pause. As always, I really just prefer to respond to your questions around meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. So we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening, and I'll respond to your thoughts and questions. And again, to those of you online, welcome. Nice to have you here. Feel free to type anything on the screen there, somewhere on a chat box, and I'll respond to your questions. Nice to see you all. I think that's Linda and Brian, Ashley, Brian, Natalie, Michelle, Robert. I think it's Rose. I wish you had these sessions every day. We do. We do have them every day. Well, almost every day. But if not, we have years of recording, so you could, you know, just listen to the same madness over and over. There's a great kind of expression in Buddhism where they talk about 84,000 paths or teachings to awakening. And that the Buddha was really saying the same thing, just 84,000 different ways. So I always kind of steal that like everything else we talk about. And I always say that I'm just saying the same thing week in and week out, or day in and day out, and just saying it differently and hoping it resonates eventually. I mean with me, not with you all. So, thoughts, questions? Yes, sir.
Do you have a favorite Zen tale or Zen koan?
Do I have a favorite Zen? And I'll always repeat the question for our viewers here, our live audience. Do I have a favorite Zen tale or a favorite Zen koan? Yes. The beauty of this is if you ask me this question every day for the next year, I will say yes every time. And I guarantee you my response will be different every time. But I'll tell you my favorite Zen tale and Zen koan as of this moment. My favorite Zen koan, for those who are not familiar with it, in Zen Buddhism, specifically there's what has kind of survived today, two major schools of Zen. Comes from the word Chan. Zen is a Japanese word, comes from Chan in Chinese, and it really goes back to the word jhana, knowledge or gnosis, and in English it just translates to meditation, which is funny because we refer to, in English, we'll say, well, I'm going to go to Zen meditation, right? But what that really means is you're going to meditation. So we just say the word twice. And so koans in the Rinzai school of Buddhism, Soto and Rinzai being the two schools that main schools that survived and are taught today for the most part. And in Rinzai practice within Zen, there's a koan practice, K-O-A-N. You can Google it, koan, and you'll see like 500 of them listed. Really kind of fun. And the general idea behind koans is they're meant to completely confuse you. Because the idea is that, especially within Zen practices, once we think we know something, then we've eliminated all possibilities of anything. Because we're like so concretely stuck, right? So, now I'm going to give you two, just because the more I talked, another one popped into my head. The first one I was going to go with is not even a koan that was given to me or one that I even necessarily know is truthful. So this whole story could be made up, but I've been using it as a motivator for me for years. Jon Kabat-Zinn, does that name mean anything to you? He's the founder of what's known as MBSR, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. He's a medical professional, doctor, and has really changed the landscape for meditation in the Western world, the world in general, but especially in a Western country where meditation, specifically Buddhism, it's kind of off-putting a little bit to a lot of Western people. They're like, I don't do meditation, I do mindfulness. I'm not religious or Buddhist, I'm spiritual. We don't care what you call yourselves, just meditate and calm down, So he created MBSR, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. I heard years ago that and he's a full-on Zen Buddhist. He's what I call, he's an in the closet, at least he was, Zen Buddhist. Somebody told me years ago that his Zen teacher, who I don't know who it was, gave him a koan of what is it that you can do with your life that nobody else can do. Years ago, I was told that was the koan that was given to Jon Kabat-Zinn. And I have taken that in as my personal practice. What can I do with this life that nobody else can do? So that's one of them. The second one is actually not really a koan. It's a tale. It's a story, I'll tell you. It's one of my favorite Zen stories. Well, as are all of them. So there's a master, and all the Zen stories are about like the great master and the young novice, and the young student. And so there's a story where the master says to the student, and they all take place in like mountains somewhere, in some Asian country, just so you can like picture like the clouds and the mountains and all that stuff. And the master says to his disciple, I want a new temple facing west. And so the disciple says, yes, master. And the disciple runs off and he spends months and months building this beautiful temple facing west. Comes back and says to the master, the temple's done. The master goes up to see it. And He says, well, this is great, but I wanted the temple facing east. And the student says, yes, master, and runs off and spends many months building this temple facing east. Months later, the master, disciple goes to the master and says, I'm done. Master goes up to see the temple and says, well, this is beautiful, but I wanted it facing south. You see how this continues, right? Love that story. You want me to explain it? Or do you get it? Or what does that mean to you, I should say? That story.
It reminds me of another one.
Okay.
So,
what's the other one?
it's about a Zen practice. A man had killed this other man's father, and he goes up to this mountain to confront the man, and the man said, you can kill me after we finish building this tunnel to a village that we can't get to. And they spend years and years building this tunnel, and when they finally break through, and the man that was building the tunnel, I guess the older man that killed this guy's father, was, a practitioner and very happy doing it, and doing it very intentionally. And in the end, after the tunnel got built in this village, basically got a way to get supplies faster.
Mm-hmm.
He sat down and said, "You may now kill me." And he said, "How could I kill my master?" Basically, he had a moment of satori when he realized the process mattered more than anything else. Not the end.
Yeah.
So
I've never heard that. I've never heard that story. So thank you. Yeah.
Told it horribly, but
that's a great thing about Zen stories. You can't tell them horribly.
Yeah, that's true.
Because even when you tell them well, usually people are like, "What?" So the only way to really tell it horribly is if somebody completely understands it. Then you absolutely, then you've ruined it.
So what's your explanation about the temple?
Say again. Sorry.
So what is your understanding or explanation about the story you told, the poem you told, the east, west, south?
Yeah. So my personal interpretation and understanding of the story of the master asking the disciple to build the temple east, west, south, whatever direction, is that in a very similar way is you're moving beyond any attachment or expectation of anything. And in the very traditional master-disciple relationship, which is completely foreign to what Westerners know within Buddhism, right? I'll digress here a minute, not just for you, but for anybody who might be brand new to this stuff. Most Western folks, when we think of teacher-student relationships, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to teach you, you're going to ask me questions, we're going to learn together, you're going to challenge me, I'm going to, and there's a whole process that goes back and forth with the teacher-student relationship that we grew up with through our education system and any other type of mentorship type stuff. In the master-student Buddhist disciple relationship, there is no questioning. You just do what your master says. So I have to set that context first, because that's a very important piece of understanding this. So my interpretation and understanding of that story is that you're not attached to any outcome at all. Each time your master asks you to do something, and this is Zen mind, beginner mind, this is the beginner's mind, you were doing something as if you've never done it before. So go build a temple facing east. Temple is done. Master says, I wanted a temple facing south. The only reason you would have a problem with building a temple facing south is if you're attached to the idea that the temple facing east is more important. What the master wants now is for you to build a temple facing south. That's the only thing that matters in that moment. Well, I thought you wanted it east. Well, I already spent 3 months east. Look how hard I worked. Look how beautiful it is. Don't you appreciate it? So in that action, the disciple wants all of the coddling and the pats on the back and, oh, yay, thank you for the temple, But when you surrender the ego. And you surrender all of the attachment to the stories that you've told yourself. And you just stay present with the experience. You're not carrying anything with you at all. And again, this only really sits with one if you can deeply understand the Zen master, Zen student, historic relationship. I'm not talking about what it's like today to jump online and have like some little Zoom Zen master who's going to charge you $50 for a session, and they're really just doing therapy with you, and they're putting some Buddhist words around it, and they're calling it, I'm your Zen master. You know, very different. This is, you know, that's the way it was. There was no questioning. So it's non-attachment. It's cutting through ego. It's getting rid of expectations. And it's, yeah.
So
I love Molly. Sure.
I read some of these Zen poems, and like to me, like they don't make sense, but to me, it's almost like it's sort of this. It's almost like this absurdity.
It's totally absurd.
You know, it's like you think it's this, but it's this. But you do this, you
Yes.
do that. And so I think about those, but it's hard. I mean, we, as people, the way our brains are wired, we do need to have, you know, we live with order, and, you know, we are trying to control the chaos because that's,
Yeah.
so, yeah. That's
Yes. It is absurd with a logical, rational mind. Zen practice is removing our stuckness in logic, in rationale. Our logic, our rationale creates a box that we are stuck in. Think back to, they still have it today. I was going to say, think back to like, you know, the childhood game, and you have the kids, again, I know they still have this today, but you have like a little Fisher Price, I don't even know what shape the whole thing is, but there's like a place for a circle, little cube, and there's a place for the little plus cube, and a place for the little star cube. You know what I'm talking about? Where there's the shapes, and you take the shapes and you put them in there, and we're all like, you know, patting the child's back. You're like, yay, you know that the star goes in the star and the circle goes in the circle. What does that mean? That example, again, I'm not expecting this to like instantly, but our minds that are stuck in that square is the reason we lack the ability to be free. And Zen practice shatters all of that. This is what I've learned through this practice. Complete non-attachment. I'm not saying that I'm great at doing it all the time, but intellectually, theoretically, philosophically, I am like 1,000% all in on this stuff. It is that box that I've created my whole life that says this is how things are supposed to be. And when life deviates from that, we are just destroyed, you know? So there was last thing I'll say on that is there was one, and I still to this day have never found it again, but some random YouTube Zen interview thing of some guy who was doing like this little, you know, documentary, and he was up at some Zen mountain center somewhere in the States. I don't even know if it was in the States. I don't know where it was. It's irrelevant. And he says to one of the residents there, one of the people in that, yeah, one of the residents there, he's talking about the schedule, and he says to the guy, how come you get up at 3:30 in the morning every day for meditation? And the guy who's being interviewed looks at him, and he kind of just starts smiling, and then he starts laughing, and his response is, I have no idea. And I was like, that's it. But we all have our ideas. And again, I get it. In a logical, rational world, I'm not saying abandon your ideas. You know, there's an idea that when you cross this street, cars are going. And if you don't look, you're going to get run over by a car, and that's going to hurt. So I'm not suggesting that we throw those things out the window with regards to common sense, logic, safety, things like that. We live in a conventional world. We have to respond in a conventional world. But within that conventional world, as Buddha talked about conventional reality and ultimate reality, within that conventional reality, can we see where ultimate reality, where there are no shapes, where is our inability to bring ultimate reality into our daily lives? And where is it in our lives that we're trying to fit our entire life in the box that you've spent your whole life creating? And for those who aren't really making the connection, the box is just the stories in your head that you've been telling yourself about how life is supposed to work. Has anyone's life plan worked so far up to this point? You know how I know it hasn't? Because you're sitting here. And it hasn't for me because I'm sitting here, right? I could say it's working now, but it was only years of misery and depression that led me to sitting here. So I'm like, yeah, my life is going exactly as freely as I want it to. But that's because, my box was like tiny and I had to completely shatter it, or it got shattered. There's a couple comments here, and I'll just touch on these and probably then wrap up. Let's see, in the book. Oh, it's such a great book. Actually, I lied. I've never read the book. It's a great movie, so I can only imagine it's a better book. In the book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, the teacher has his student go on a massive hike, telling him there's something amazing he needs to see at the top of the mountain. It's such a Zen story. When they reach the top, the teacher tells the student that a small rock on the ground is the amazing object. The student is livid at first until he understands the importance of the journey. So if you haven't seen the book or seen the movie or read the book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior is so beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. What else? Any other final? Yeah, we'll go 2 here and then we'll wrap up. Yeah, go ahead.
The meditation that we did, were we working on like the first jhana within the Eightfold Path or anything? Or?
Man, you're reading too much. No. You got to stop reading.
Okay.
Trying to decide how to, I was already hard on you once last week, so I figured I'd be nice to you tonight, and then we'll go back and forth, Kind of like I said, Ruben, you got to wait a little while before you start hammering people. So I don't, jhanas, which are meditative states, rapture, absorption, I don't work on any of that stuff at all. Nor do I feel that I should be leading anyone in some sort of jhana meditative exploration. I'm just an idiot sitting here trying to breathe. And I mean that very seriously. I'm not trying to sound humble. The reason I kind of make the joke about stop reading is that's the danger of reading. I do mean that very seriously. You should stop reading, because what you're reading is really at first benefiting you. But then it reaches a point of we just try to sit here for 20 minutes. And now what you want to know is if you've reached some state of meditation in some place on the Eightfold Path. So what you've just done with Buddhist teachings is you've now put it into the box that I just talked about not doing. You follow me? So I know I've known you for a good, 3 months now, right? I know that you have read more. Read, written, documented, laminated. He gave me the most incredible report last week, printed report, and said, here. And I basically threw it back at him. Right? Literally. I mean, there were people there, I would have thrown it at him, right? My point is, you're studying and practicing in a beautiful way, but now you need to kind of call time out and say, okay, can I just sit for 20 minutes and not think about what I'm going to have for dinner, and not think about my grocery list, and not think about what jhana state I'm in, right? Can I just sit for 20 minutes and just sit and work on sensation of breath? The more we read, especially for people who like to learn and like to intellectually decipher, the harder this practice becomes. Because then we're trying to be something else. So instead of Cliff trying to and for all of us, trying to latch on to some outside Buddhist thing, work on opening up what's already there. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like when you're talking about putting boxes, like society places so much emphasis, like you have to know what you want to do by the time you graduate college. You have to be married by a certain time. You have to it sets all these expectations, and then when you don't meet those expectations, you just feel really shitty about it.
Oh yeah, we're all failures.
And it's but that's not I don't know. I've never cared about that because if somebody tells me that I need to do something, I just do the complete opposite. But, I've just watched so many people just get so stressed out because they're like, well, I'm 30 and I'm not married.
Yeah.
I'm 35 and I don't have a kid, and who cares?
Yeah.
That's somebody else's journey. It's not necessarily your journey.
For sure. Yeah, the comment, just to repeat for those joining online, is that the general idea of how society places so many boxes around us, that we're supposed to be married at a certain age, or know what we're supposed to do after college, or have a kid by a certain age, and that for you it never really played out so much. That never really impacted you because you were more along the lines of somebody told you one thing, you would do the opposite. And so I'll is that fair? Yeah, I just want to read. So I'll kind of close with this thought, and yes, my joke very often is, for those of us who are feeling so much stress or panic and all that kind of stuff, yes, all the billboards, all the advertisements, everything out there, there are billions of dollars spent telling us what we should look like, what we should wear, what we should eat, and where we should go. And when all of that is completely ruined, what pill we should take for it. And then that cycle just repeats. So that in Buddhism, just in life, but we talk about that as conditioning. And so everything's been set up as some sort of conditioning that someone has put on us. And that starts from birth. It's not our fault. It's just how we are. We're born and, somebody looks at me and they're like, that's Jeff. And I'm like, oh, my name is Jeff. And then they're like, these are your fingers. I'm like, oh, these are my fingers. And then I'm laying in my crib and I turn over and they're like, yeah, you can turn over. And then they tell you to crawl. And then they're like, yeah, you can crawl, but that's not good enough. So then you got to walk and then you got to run. And then every grade we have to advance. And so our entire society and structure and system is set up to be more, be better, be something greater than what you are. And nothing tells us, and that's why one of my other favorite Zen expressions, Suzuki Roshi, said, you're all perfect exactly how you are, and you all could use a little improvement. And I've always loved that expression because for me, it's that kind of positive, hey, I'm okay. But I'm not going to just stop working on being kinder, gentler person. So, yeah, we're all stuck in that box that societies build for us. And again, liberation, freedom from suffering, is completely shattering from that box. But the last thought I'll say, it's not the box that you have to shatter. It's yourself. It's your attachments. So you should all have that done by Wednesday, I'm sure. All right, so we'll join palms and close next Wednesday, not tomorrow. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the more than 6 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic and their family and friends who continue to suffer. To all of those in Ukraine and surrounding areas that suffer at this time. To those who lost lives in the shootings in Texas and in Highland Park, Chicago. To the children, the adults, and the family and friends who suffer. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. right, so we thank you all. Just have a few quick announcements from David, our volunteer Dharma Bum host. Welcome, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Fellow failure here. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. That would be you all. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice with others. Just about every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions, so check it out. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, or anything else for that matter. Family sangha for parents, kids, toddlers, and teens, which currently meets once a month. We also offer a half-day silent retreat the first Saturday of the month with an RSVP required. Anything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library out in the back. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow and bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. And thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.
Thanks, David.